Hello there and welcome into another edition of the JayMac Podcast. I want to give you a quick update on some of the more recent things we've learned about COVID-19. As I've shared with you in the past, this is not the same as the flu because we only have months with this illness and we are still learning more and more. And that's why I think that we should all err on the side of caution because we just don't know the long-term effects of this illness. So today will be all about sharing with you the most recent information that I've been able to see that is out there. And some of it is very concerning. Before we do that, I want to thank those of you who have become patrons to this podcast. I'm touched, I'm honored. That so many of you have signed up and committed to donate $1 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month. If you do come in at the $10 level, you will get access to top secret podcasts that are only available at that donation level. I released one last night and I've got more fun ones to come. So click on the link in this description or go to our social media and you'll see a link there on how to support this podcast. Help me continue to bring fearless honesty to you. And we can continue to sort through the daily madness and sort through the politics of it all and hopefully get to the truth. So to me, the biggest, most screaming banner event ever when it comes to COVID-19 happened on Saturday.
Donald Trump has worn a face mask in public for the first time during a visit to a military hospital near the White House on Saturday. The decision was made after months of pleas from experts and aides for the president to follow his own government's guidelines. Masks have been politically divisive in the U.S., with the president having ridiculed those wearing them in the past.
So, there we have it, the president of the United States finally donning a face mask, which clearly means that every single person out there who was refusing to wear a mask, you now have permission from the President of the United States. Now, this has been part of the presidential guidelines forever, but he has refused himself to wear a mask to set that example. Well, now that he's doing it, maybe other people in Utah will decide to do it. Maybe Burgess Owens, the man who beat me in the primary election, who refuses to wear a mask, will finally wear a mask. Maybe Kim Coleman will finally wear a mask. Maybe you will finally wear a mask now that the President of the United States himself has finally decided to wear a mask. Now, let me move on to some of the other news stories when it comes to COVID-19 that I think are important. Now, I said during the campaign that I thought that the state of Utah was opening up too early. I thought that the country was opening up too early and that other states were rushing to open as well. And here we have some information that suggests perhaps I was on the right side of history. The story is that states that ended shutdowns early are leading the surge in coronavirus infections. Florida and South Carolina were among the first to open and are now among the states leading the current surge in coronavirus cases. Now, in contrast, the states that bore the brunt of cases in March and April, but were slower to reopen, guess what they've seen? Significant decreases in reported cases. Average daily cases in New York are down 52% and 83% in Massachusetts. So to me, this was fairly obvious. We've talked about it many times. I think that there's a right way to reopen and a wrong way to reopen. And I think that reopening has a lot to do with how we as citizens are going to participate in the process. It's funny to me that people say they don't want to wear a mask, but at the same time, they say they want to reopen. Well, to me, the two go hand in hand. You need to wear a mask, and if you do so, we can reopen. They're tied together, and these statistics prove that. I'll share with you some of the states here. South Carolina was the first to open, and they continue to set records for reported cases. The average daily count case was up to 1,570, up from 143 before the state reopened. Let's look at Georgia. Cases are up 245% since late April. Florida has seen more than a 10-fold increase in average daily cases since it began to reopen. Arizona, on top of seeing spikes in cases, has the highest rate of positive tests in the country, with nearly 1 in 4 coming back positive. The nationwide rate is roughly 9%. California, among the first states to be affected by the coronavirus, is now seeing a spike in cases as well. The state was once seen as a model for how to contain the virus, but experts blame the current surge on inconsistent adoption of prevention strategies and haphazard reopening process that gave people a false sense that they were in the clear, and they all ended up at the beach together. New York, however, which was once the epicenter, they've seen average daily cases numbers plummet along with the rate of positive test results, which sit at 1%. The state is still reopening, but a full return to normal is a ways off, especially as hotspots emerge across the country. So it should become pretty clear as we look at how each state has decided to handle the pandemic. It should be pretty clear how we need to move forward. And it should be pretty clear that we, the people, share a huge role in this. And that if we are not willing to do our part, then the coronavirus will continue. And again, I hear people saying this, and we did a podcast about it. People saying, oh, it's just like the flu. We just need to let people get sick and get over it. We continue to learn about this disease, and I am telling you, it is much worse than the flu. It can do much more damage than the flu, and we're learning that it can cause irreparable harm to the body. Listen to this study. Coronavirus can damage the heart, with more than half of hospitalized patients scanned revealed abnormalities to their heart. This was a survey of 69 countries, was funded by the British Heart Foundation, found that 55% of patients studied had abnormal changes to the way their heart was pumping, with around 1 in 7 showing evidence of severe dysfunction. The majority had never been diagnosed with heart problems before. And now here they are after COVID, and they have severe heart conditions. This illness is something that could be affecting Americans and people in this world for years to come. It could bring on medical conditions that need to be treated not for months, like the flu would bring along, but for years, for decades. And we're also finding out that it's not enough to have had it to provide some level of immunity, especially if you had it and you didn't show any symptoms. Apparently, that group of people is not very immune for the next time around, but they may think that they're immune, and so they change their habits. And that's problematic because they are still susceptible. Now, this is right here in the state of Utah. A COVID-19 survivor still can't smell or taste 4 months after recovery from COVID-19. He says it's not something you would ever want to have in your life. He is, by the way, 23 years old. He caught COVID-19 during a ski trip to Steamboat Springs, Colorado, nearly 4 months ago. He says, I'm feeling pretty good, but I still can't taste or smell. And he has no idea when that is going to change. And then more information coming out. And I realize that, this goes back and forth because we're still learning. And one study will show one thing, and then another study will come out and contradict it. but that should be an example to you of how little we really know about the coronavirus. This report and study says coronavirus survives in the air for more than an hour. The report says coronavirus can survive in the air for more than 1 hour, according to a senior government scientific advisor, Professor Wendy Barclay, a virologist on the Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies, said the virus could remain viable even in tiny particles suspended in the atmosphere. Her comments follow a change of position by the World Health Organization, which last week acknowledged that so-called aerosol particles could be a route of transmission. So again, we are learning more and more about this virus. And to act like we know what it is and what it does, and to just say we need to let people get it so that we get herd immunity, and everybody should be wandering around without masks, and we should just open up. Honestly, this thing could be 10 times worse than we know right now. It could be that 12 months from now, people who have this are experiencing incredibly severe conditions and are dying, and they had recovered from it. We just don't know. So wandering around and acting like we do know and taking no thought or care for those around us by not wearing masks, I would encourage you to rethink that. Now, you know that the President of the United States is wanting schools to be opened. He actually made the statement that if schools aren't opening, it's not because of any concerns about the virus. It's because people don't want him to get reelected. And that should show you how he frames every single decision. That should give you some insight into his mind and how it works. But a question that has to be answered if we're going to open up schools is whether or not children actually spread the coronavirus. And there's varying reports on that, but I'll share with you some of what we know. Evidence suggests that children are not as susceptible as adults. Even among those who have been infected, it's rare for children to develop serious complications. We do know that among a few children, there are some serious complications. In the U.S., children make up about 22% of the population, but kids account for only 2% of coronavirus cases so far. So does that mean that they can go back to schools? I think that it means that they can if we follow certain procedures and conditions to keep them safe. This is a quote from the report. It said, the younger you are, probably the less likely you are to be able to transmit the disease. Once you get to high school age, you're going to be a little bit more concerned. And once you're in college age, you're going to be a lot concerned. So the jury's still out on how much children can spread the coronavirus. Because, again, one of the concerns that should be considered is, let's say we believe that kids can go to school and they can be amongst each other and the disease can be present at school, but they're not going to catch it a lot. And they're not going to spread it a lot, and they're not going to get those symptoms. But there is a percentage of them who will get it. And whether or not they are facing symptoms, they will bring that disease home. And we know who's at home, older adults. So you can't just look at it in a bubble. You can't just look at it from the perspective of whether or not kids will get this and how it will affect those kids. My wife works at a high school. So the question is not whether those high school kids can get it and spread it and have effects from it. I mean, that is a question that needs to be asked. But for me, the question is, how many of them can be a carrier and not have symptoms? And they walk in to where my wife works, and they're spreading that disease to her, or they're bringing it home to mom and dad, or grandma and grandpa. So you can't just look at schools in a bubble. And that's something that has to be considered as well. And the final thing I'll share with you is if you are somebody who wants to wear a mask, but you don't want to order one, you can't afford one, whatever, masks are being made available at 225 grocery stores and pharmacies all across the state of Utah, according to the Governor's Office of Economic Development. So you ought to be able to just walk in the grocery store and pick up a mask or two there. I picked one up from Home Depot because mine broke as I was walking into the store, and they have them right there, right in front for you able to use. So again, I just would encourage you once again to realize that Utah opens faster. Our economy opens quicker. A return to normalcy happens faster. A flatten the curve happens sooner if more and more of us decide to wear masks and practice social distancing. The evidence bears that out in every single state where it's being practiced. So this one's on us. And I hope that we can all make the right decision. And I don't think we're going to have to do it for very long if we decide to do it en masse. So that, again, is my encouragement for you today as I continue to share fearless honesty. More coming up soon.